In 2008, I found myself sitting in a room at the Library of Congress in Washington, doing research on a book about the prize fighter, Sugar Ray Robinson. In a hallway, I saw a sign that said, "Next week, the fight films of Sugar Ray Robinson will be shown." These were 2 evenings worth of fight films in beautiful black and white from the New York City of the 1950s. Imagine that. I felt like the luckiest fool on earth. A few months ago, a movie came out called The Butler, about the life of Eugene Allen, a man who served as a butler in the White House for 34 years. I had, early on in 2008, felt that the Illinois Senator Barack Obama was going to win the 2008 election. And I wanted to find a figure to juxtapose with that story. A black person who had worked inside the White House during the era of segregation. I looked all around the country. Somebody one day called me from Tampa, Florida, and said, "I hear you're looking for somebody from the White House." They said, "There's a man by the name of Eugene Allen. He worked for 3 presidents." I said, "Great. I think I'd like to talk to him. Have you got his phone number?" She said, "You're the reporter, aren't you?" She told me he was stepping out of the White House. Last time she saw him coming from a butler and maid's reunion, he was getting into a taxi cab. So I figured if he was getting into a taxi that he must live in Virginia, Maryland, or Washington, D.C. And I got out a stack of phone books and started making phone calls. It's a very common name. On the 57th call, I said, "Hello, this is Wil Haygood of the Washington Post. I'm looking for Mr. Eugene Allen, who used to work at the White House for 3 presidents." He said, "You're speaking to him." I said, "Mr. Allen, I would love to come over and talk to you. We're a few days from the election, and it could be historic." He said, "Well, first of all, let me correct you. It wasn't 3 presidents that I worked for. It was 8. I said, "Now I absolutely must come over and talk to you." He said, "Let me ask my wife." He said, "Honey, there's a writer who wants to come over here and talk to me." And she said, "Wants to come and talk to you about what?" He said, "Well, baby, I guess my life. Working in the White House." She said, "Well, tell him he can come, but he can't come tomorrow because we both have doctor's appointments." So I waited a day, and I went over there, and it was Friday, 4 days before the election. I arrived at 9:55 in the morning. As I sat down, ready to pull up my notebook and my pen, Mrs. Allen turned to me and said, "At 10 o'clock, we watch The Price is Right." "We are going to talk to you, but we do watch this program, which is coming on now in 2 minutes." So I sat there from 10 to 10:30. At 10:30, Mr. Allen, who was very quiet, said, Now at 10:30, we watched the rerun from 10:30 to 11. By 10:45, I found myself saying, "Don't bet on that refrigerator. Are you nuts? What in the world?" Finally, at 11:01, these two people, these two Southern-born people, these two Southern-born African Americans start telling me about their life, taking me through the wonderful arc of their life. Both born in the South, they had come north during the Great Migration, north in a more northern spot, Washington, D.C. They met at a party. She thought he was giving her the eye from across the room, but he was too shy to ask for her phone number. But before they both left the party, she got his phone number. And a year later, they married. In 1952, he went to the White House. Under President Harry Truman. He was at the White House and heard the echoes and the ripples of the Emmett Till murder, the Medgar Evers murder, the Martin Luther King Jr. murder, the Cold War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, Man on the Moon, the assassination of the Kennedy brothers. History. At one point, Mrs. Helene Allen turned to her husband and said, "Sweetheart, you can show him now." I didn't know what that meant. He stood up. He had a jangle of keys around his belt loop and asked me to hold his arm and walk me through the kitchen. There was a big padlock on the basement door. I had no idea why someone needed a lock on their basement door. He told me to hold on to his arm because it's going to be dark until we got to the middle of the basement. We walked downstairs. We reached the middle of the basement and he turned on the light. And it changed my life. There were photographs of every president that Mr. Allen had served under. There were gorgeous letters handwritten to him and his wife from the first ladies of the United States of America. There were gifts, there were paintings, gifts that the presidents had given him. There was a big Stetson hat from President Lyndon Johnson. It was as if I had been dropped into a room at the Smithsonian. I was stunned. I literally got weak in the knees. I walked over to him and I said, "Mr. Allen, are you sure? Are you saying that nobody has ever written about this, about your life?" He looked at me and he said, "Well, if you think I'm worthy, you'll be the first." I had to walk away from him so I could keep my composure.